including being able to use the bathroom in accordance with their gender identity without any fear of discipline, harassment, or violence.
Well, help me understand this. What schools, there are some states restrict which bathrooms transgender students can use. Will those states now have to change those rules?
That really remains to be seen. I think Title IX advocates are anxiously awaiting potential legal challenges to this rule and how those will play out at the state level. But again, Title IX affirms the rights of LGBTQI plus students to come to school. And I think that's extra important in this moment when we're seeing these escalating attacks on LGBTQI youth's rights at the state level.
But before we let you go, it's my understanding that these new rules don't apply to transgender student athletes. So schools could, if they want, forbid these trans athletes from playing on teams that correspond with their gender identity. Will that be addressed at some point?
Yes, it will be. The Biden administration is working on a separate rule. But what's important to note here is that even in the absence of an explicit athletics rule, Title IX does protect trans, intersex, and non-binary student athletes.
That is Emma Grasso-Levine, and they are with the youth advocacy group Know Your Nine. Emma Grasso-Levine, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Ray Martinez.
And I'm Michael Hill. Marketplace Morning Report is next, and later on Morning Edition, a shipwrecked British sailor teams up with a feudal lord in 17th century Japan. Their partnership changes the course of a nation. Coming up, how authenticity has made the FX miniseries Shogun one of the most successful shows of the entire year. That story next hour right here on Morning Edition on WNYC. We have sunshine and cool temperatures across the region. 39 in Melville, 37 in Muncie, and 40 in Montclair right now. 46 in the big city with sunshine, on the way to a high today of 63 with sunshine with a slight wind to start us off. It's going to be another spring-like day. It's 6:51.
Support for WNYC comes from FX's The Veil, an international spy thriller starring Elizabeth Moss. One woman has a secret and the other has a mission to reveal it before thousands of lives are lost. Premieres April 30th only on Hulu.
On the next Brian Lehrer Show, as spring semesters climax on campus, so is the complicated conflict over the war in Gaza, American anti-Semitism, free speech, and safety concerns from Columbia in New York to USC in LA. We'll continue to take your calls on finding the right balance of school policies. Also, labor activist and scholar Jane McAlevey on her life's work in the field. The Brian Lehrer Show, weekdays at 10 a.m. on WNYC.
Labor relations in every Starbucks cup.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Progressive Insurance, helping protect small businesses with a variety of coverages like general liability, workers' compensation, and commercial auto. More at progressivecommercial.com. And by UKG. UKG is a partner that delivers HR, pay, time, and culture solutions designed to help build a great workplace for everyone. UKG, our purpose is people.
I'm David Brancaccia. The Supreme Court will hear oral arguments today on whether the National Labor Relations Board has to present more proof when intervening on behalf of workers trying to unionize. The challenge by the coffee chain Starbucks comes as the High Court is considering other efforts to curb federal authority. Marketplace's Nova Safo is here. Nova?
David, this case has to do with a Starbucks store in Memphis where 6 employees who were trying to unionize got fired. Starbucks said they violated its policies unrelated to the unionization effort. The National Labor Relations Board got a judge to grant a temporary injunction requiring the company to rehire the workers until the agency adjudicated the case. Starbucks sued, saying the NLRB should have a higher burden of proof that it did something wrong, that it has to show that a company likely interfered in unionization efforts before intervening. The crux of the case is that there are 2 standards in federal courts. Some circuits use a 2-part test to determine whether to grant the NLRB a temporary injunction, and others use a 4-part test. And Starbucks wants everyone to use the 4-part test.
So it's not just consistency. Starbucks wants the consistent standard that's harder for the NLRB to meet.
That's right. Now, the NLRB argues that it won't make much of a difference for the agency because it already considers the elements of the 4-part test when it decides whether to even ask for injunctive relief. And it points out that it rarely asks. But if justices rule in Starbucks' favor, it does mean a tougher burden of proof across the nation. The two-part test is relatively simple, including a reasonable cause to believe unfair labor practices occurred. The tougher test requires things like a likelihood that the agency will eventually prevail. So that's a lot more complex and difficult for the agency to meet as proof.
All right, Nova, thank you. Markets, S&P and NASDAQ futures are both up 0.3%. The Italian city of Milano, wants ice cream shops, pizzerias, and takeout food places to shut down at 12:30 a.m. in an effort to stop clusters of noisy people from disturbing residents trying to get some shut-eye. The curfew would go from mid-May until November, but the proposal is still up for public comment.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by C3 Generative AI. Verified, traceable answers, secure, hallucination-free, LLM-agnostic, IP liability-free. Learn more at c3.ai. And by Make Me Smart, a podcast from Marketplace that digs into the latest in business, culture, and tech news to help make sense of the complex issues that affect us all. Listen wherever you get your podcasts. And by Autodesk, striving to help the world's designers, engineers, builders, and creators design and make anything. Learn more at Autodesk.com.
Once known as the murder capital of the world, El Salvador recorded its lowest rate of murder in 3 decades. Its president, Nayib Bukele, started a second term this winter, and his administration's state of emergency is now into a 3rd year. Tens of thousands of gang members have been arrested, suspected gang members. The streets of El Salvador are safer, but the country is heavily in debt. Jane Chambers with our newsroom partners at the BBC reports.
Janira Lopez sells fruit on a street near the historic main square in the capital, San Salvador. She says it's hard to make a living.
The security guards confiscate our produce, and we must pay a fine to get it back. The president has cleaned up the center of the city where we are and is getting rid of us street sellers. But this is our only way of making a living, and there are a lot of poor people here.
Despite Janira's complaints, many people are happy the city centre's been cleaned up. Tourists and locals take selfies at the iconic library President Bukele had built and feel safe in a place that was once a no-go area. Elsewhere, the economy's picking up.
My name is Karen Fuentes. I'm a realtor in RE/MAX Central, El Salvador.
Karen works in a heavily air-conditioned office on the 21st floor of a fancy building in the centre of San Salvador, with incredible views of the mountains and volcanoes that surround the city, and views of the best neighbourhoods clients want to make their home. It's not just locals who want a piece of the action.
Our clients are mostly Salvadorians who live here, but 50% are Salvadorians who live outside our country, or even foreigners who don't have roots here. And right now, because of the perception of our country from outside, they are very interested in El Salvador.
What's this popularity doing to property prices?
And the clouds are very, very, very high, the prices right now.
More tourists are also visiting the country now, and the popular surf beaches are filling up. Small-scale business owners are happy that gangs no longer ask them for money, but nearly a third of people live in poverty, according to the World Bank, and many feel they don't have any choice but to leave the country, like 24-year-old mechanic Jaime Chavez.
There used to be a problem with security with all the gangs. Now that's better, but I can't earn enough to support my family. I get paid around $250 a month, but you need around $450 to $500 to be able to live better.
So where would you like to go?
To the United States. Most people who have gone there have a better quality of life because there are more opportunities.
Jaime's not alone in wanting to leave El Salvador. It's estimated there are around 1 million Salvadorians living in the United States, according to the Pew Research Center. And the money they send home is crucial, as economist Tatiana Morokin explains.
Around 25% of the country's GDP comes from money that Salvadorans who have migrated send back to their families. We know that for around half of the families who receive the money, it's their primary source of income or their only source of income.
Now El Salvador's President Bukele has managed to improve security. He says his next job is to tackle poverty, He's just announced 5,000 free passports and tax breaks to highly skilled workers from abroad to try to boost the economy. But people like mechanic Jaime Chavez say they need more opportunities to persuade them not to leave for the US. In El Salvador, I'm the BBC's Jane Chambers for Marketplace.
Our Elizabeth Troval also has the piece, Salvadoran Janitors Fight for Better Wages, Supporting Families in the U.S. and Abroad. That is streamable from marketplace.org now. I'm David Brancaccio with our morning report. From APM, American Public Media.